It is one of the great mysteries of the ancient world. Who were the oracles? These young women who went into a wild trance and made these extraordinary predictions. How did they do it? And is there a more down-to-earth explanation for their psychic powers?
Oracles harnessed natural energy to access the realm of the gods and produce the truth about the future.
It is so tight and narrow down here, and that you really get the sense that you're dropping down into hell.
Oracles were absolutely believed. This gave them great power. Oracles ultimately had a great part to play in the tapestry of history.
Nobody would make a decision without covering their bum first and consulting the oracle.
We are now stood in the Oracle of the Dead.
The Oracle of the Dead. This is it.
You were paying for your pilgrimage. You were paying to be in the presence of something holy.
But it's difficult to know whether it was entirely honest or not.
I'm getting quite freaked out by this. This is quite...
Well,
it feels a bit eerie. This is Baia on the southern coast of Italy near Naples. And for centuries, rulers and philosophers and writers like Homer and Virgil would visit here to explore a network of underground tunnels known as the Oracle of the Dead. Homer's hero Odysseus travelled up the west coast of Italy here to what he believed were the gates of Hades. It was quite literally a descent into hell.
The Oracle of the Dead at Baia was a sacred underground labyrinth which led the initiate down to the mythical river Styx. Once they crossed this, they had entered the underworld, in which they visited the Sibyl, or high priestess, who was often a young virgin sat in a small torchlit chamber. Through her, you'd be able to communicate with your dead relatives, as well as the gods themselves. In essence, it was an ancient, elaborate, and very unsettling version of a modern psychic crossed with a scary Santa's grotto, and it was a hugely important part of the ancient world. The whole process was carefully managed by the priests and their assistants who ran these sites. It was deliberately designed to be disorientating for the initiate. It was dark, cramped, and really felt like a descent into hell. And this whole experience came at a price.
People in the ancient world were certainly very superstitious. I don't think humanity has particularly changed in that respect. But they were much more into their gods and their goddesses. They really thought that these deities were ruling the world, that everything was prescribed, if you like, and that if you went to the right places and spoke to the right people, that they would be able to tell you what was likely to happen in the future.
So just as there are some honest mediums today who will tell you what they genuinely believe they've seen and heard from the spirit world, so there are some confidence tricksters who will pretend to be seers and mediums, and who, for an exorbitant fee, will tell you what the non-existent spirits have said to them.
Of course, the idea crosses one's mind that it was all a big con. I mean, it might have started off as a good idea, and certainly the people believed they were getting something for their money. But of course, it's open as a system. It's desperately open to abuse, especially as the priestess herself would characteristically utter gibberish, and that had to be interpreted by somebody else who was given a little backhand, a little donation. So it was self-fulfilling, it was self-generating.
The underground labyrinth in Baia dates back to the earliest Greek settlement in western Italy, around 750 BC. It was first discovered by Dr. Robert Paget, an amateur archaeologist in 1962. And today, the archaeological park has become a popular destination for tourists on the Italian coast. Historian Andrew Goff has long been fascinated with the ancient oracles and agreed to take me on a tour of the site at Baia.
Oracles harnessed natural energy to create an environment by which the priestess, the Sibyl, could access the realm of the gods and produce the truth about the future. The fact is, these oracle centers were also profit centers. They were in business to make money. They required a lot of people and a lot of effort, and they were paid handsomely by their patrons.
Like most services offered by priests and priestesses over the centuries in whatever religion, there was a little donation required. And an offering to the gods, obviously, so that's the same sort of thing. But basically, you were paying for your pilgrimage. You were paying to be in the presence of something holy.
In the ancient world, the Oracle of the Dead at Baia was a major attraction for the rich and famous of the time. It was part Roman baths and health spa, part underground labyrinth, and part luxury seaside resort. It quickly gained a reputation for hedonism and debauchery. But after the fall of the Roman Empire and several earthquakes, it fell into ruin and was slowly lost under centuries of farming and development. Andy had arranged special access to the site for us.
The oracles of the ancient world were absolutely critical to all matters of government and state. If you had to make a decision about going to war or who's going to be the candidate for the Senate, you would consult your peers, but they all have their own agenda. You would go and consult the gods, because if you were on record as having consulted the gods, nobody would question the result, good or bad. You're absolved from responsibility because the gods told you it was okay. So it was absolutely fundamental to any ruler, to any powerful businessman, to consult the oracles first before doing anything. Now, of course, the site is restricted access, as you might imagine. He says, with the keys to the kingdom. Here we go.
Okay, lead on.
This, my friend, is Baia.
Oh, wow.
What do you think? Fantastic,
Look
isn't
at
it?
that. Wow.
I mean, it's amazing. Everyone comes to Naples. What do? They go to Pompeii. I mean, it's a hidden gem.
So this is what, 2,000 years old?
Exactly. You're looking at basically 100 BC onward.
And so what was it? Was it a temple complex or what?
You know, not at all. It was a spa. I mean, people would come here to do all sorts of things. Swimming, sports. They get pampered.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Some things never change.
And what about this here? What's this?
Well, this is fantastic. This is perhaps the best preserved Roman thermal bath in the world. It's the Temple of Mercury.
Okay, so what would have gone in there? That was just for swimming and...
Well, you can only speculate because in addition to being a spa, I mean, imagine what the elite of Italy would do when they were here. I mean, imagine how decadent it possibly could have been. And, you know, it's worth pointing out that none of this was visible in the 50s. This was a vineyard. I mean, this was covered in terraces of vines.
So this was all underground, and when was it discovered?
It was excavated in the 1950s.
What we can see today is the result of years of excavation and restoration after the site's rediscovery in the 1950s, including the magnificent Baths of Mercury, one of the best preserved in the world.
So what kind of people would have visited here?
Well, it was the rich and famous, powerful, and the elite. I mean, Caesar and his family had a villa here. The Emperor Octavian, Nero, they all came here.
Right, so this really was a playground of the rich and famous, right?
Well, so much so that they called it that Little Rome, and some even say that it became the Monte Carlo of the south of Italy.
The real secret of Baia was something called the Great Antrim of Initiation, where the rich and famous would descend into an underground labyrinth to meet the Oracle and commune with the dead. It's been sealed off to the public for decades, so we'd arranged for special permission to enter it. A local caving expert and archaeologist, Graziano Ferrari, and his colleague Raffaella would take us down there once we had the safety briefing.
Since we are going underground, that's a dangerous place. It's quite narrow and low. First of all, you need to wear a helmet with the light. You see, in this way, you switch it on. And this way, you switch it off.
Excellent,
It's
thank
one
you.
for you. The second point is that we are going into a volcanic area, so maybe we can meet some dangerous gas. So we bring a gas analyzer, which is running, and now I show you what it happens when the air becomes dangerous. When you hear this blinking sound, keep calm, let's turn back and go out. Please hear my command. Nothing will happen, but if anything, I will tell you how to behave. Keep calm. Anyway.
Okay.
And we are going to look at the Styx River.
The entrance to the Great Antrim could only be reached via a ladder, as it lay about 20 feet down a very narrow passage in the rocks. If this was the way in, we could only imagine what lay ahead underground. The plan was for us to descend as far as we could and try to reach the actual river Styx, which, according to mythology, was the boundary between this world and the afterlife. According to the story, a boatman would ferry you across the water into the underworld, where you could then meet the Oracle.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Enjoy.
Okay. So, Andy, it seems really narrow in here. I can't believe that people would have actually come down here.
Well, you know, it's designed for single file, right? So, I mean, one person can barely fit. But imagine the effect that creates, especially as right now you can sense we're starting to really descend quickly. The floor is, you know, angling down faster and faster every step we take.
So they would have come down here to find, what, an oracle at the end, or?
Well, I mean, we're descending, you know, over 100 meters into the earth. Why would you have this structure if it wasn't for a ritual? A ritual that the Oracle of the Dead, that Homer, that Virgil have told us is all about paying homage to the ancestors to learn about events and our own fate in our own life. Today, the spirit realm is universally agreed to be up there. But that wasn't always the case. In the ancient world, the netherworld, where you went after you died, that was down in the earth. So they sought with these sacred sites and temples and oracles of the dead to recreate that experience so that you could have the experience of talking directly to your ancestors by physically going to Hades. And that was quite powerful.
It is so tight and narrow down here, and that you really get the sense that you're dropping down into hell. It's amazing to think that people would have crawled down these narrow tunnels.
This whole area is volcanic. Imagine the mist, the noise, the visuals were really atmospheric, and today they are as well. You're going way down into the earth, and it's physically uncomfortable, and you're just a little bit spooked out about what you are seeing and what you're thinking you're seeing. And it's very hot. The further you go and the more you descend, it is bloody hot, and you just feel disorientated. Wow.
Okay. So you can feel it's getting pretty tight down here, and you really get the sense that you're about to find something pretty special.
Yeah, it's not easy for you, so tall.
So
That's the hot spring.
right, okay.
River Styx.
You can approach.
So this is the water here?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
You can feel the temperature is rising because we are near to the.
So this is the water here?
Yes, you can touch the sticks.
Okay. And here it is. This is the river Styx. This is where the boatman would take the visitor across to the other side. And I can just put my finger, and it's, yeah, it feels quite warm. And it's warm. You really get a sense that the temperature is warming up down here. It's getting far more humid than it was further up. And this is as close as I'm ever going to get to hell, I hope.
Having found what could have been the mythical and symbolic river Styx, we still needed to find the next part of the initiatory journey, the sanctuary where the Oracle would sit. The problem we faced was that most of the access tunnels had collapsed, and the ones that were left were now full of earth. It was hot, humid, and full of mosquitoes.
I gotta tell you, the whole atmosphere of the descent changes once you get beyond the river Styx. The temperature, it doubles. It's so hot. And I can't help but think if that is by design. If so, it's very effective because you're just boiling. Your expectations of what's gonna happen when you're here coincide with a natural increase in the temperature, which creates quite a, I think, an unsettling effect.
But if you really believed in hell, what would it be like coming down here?
Well, I think if you believed in hell, you would be damn sure you had just entered. You had just made the descent to the one and only Hades. You'd have no doubt in your mind.
Okay. If you need some help, tell me.
So we're now coming up to the sanctuary, which is just beyond the river Styx. Wow. Okay. Wow. So it all opens up here.
Yeah.
Why is this? What have we got here?
This is another very odd place. We are in a volcanic eruption dated 9,000 years. No more, no less.
So is this where the Oracle might have been?
Yes, this is what Paget calls the sanctuary.
So the domain of the Sibyl, you can pretty much summarize in 3 types of places. One being a really dark cave, usually deep in the earth. The second being over a cleft in the ground where natural gases are being emitted. And the third would be in sort of a pit where there's flames all around here. And the effect would be identical in each. She is off her head. She is communing with the gods. She's writhing and moaning, and anybody would recognize that behavior as being that of somebody who's no longer conscious and who's actually possessed by the gods.
They were positioned over a fissure in a rock, up through which came volcanic fumes, ethylene, which, you know, must have changed her mentality for however briefly and enabled her to utter this impressive gibberish. But having said that, I don't want to be too sceptical, because in the modern day there are shamans all over the world who take drugs, and they believe that actually what happens is the drugs do obviously affect the brain, and they also open the mind as a kind of portal so they can communicate with spirits or with gods. So you pay your money and you take your choice there, but it certainly seems that it is possible that they were acting shamanically.
It's not unlikely that the oracles themselves were taking drugs of one sort or another. This was quite common in ancient religion because it was thought that it would get you into a state where you could approach your god or your goddess more directly. And in tribal societies in the world, it's still used today. So it's possible that you were talking to the oracle, but that the oracle believed herself to be possessed by something else.
Well, I've just been to hell and back, and I don't think I want to do it again. Not with the heat and the humidity and the bats and the claustrophobia. Quite happy to be out.
Slowly.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
I have to say that the descent into Baia's labyrinth was quite an experience. But was this really the Oracle of the Dead that Homer wrote about? The archaeologists here say that it's most likely to be just a steam vent rising from the thermal springs below the baths. And for me, it does seem a little too tight and awkward for a regular stream of important initiates to use, especially ones over 6 feet tall.
The difference between today's version of a Sibyl, a fortune teller, and the actual Sibyl is profound. First of all, there's no show. They don't convulse and speak to the gods. And second of all, a Sibyl's prophecy is never, ever doubted or questioned for a second. And today, when we go to a fortune teller, we'll usually go, thanks for that. Nah, I think that was rubbish, really. But you would never, ever do that with a Sibyl. Their word was golden.
There's no doubt that oracles were big business for the people who were running them. And that would therefore suggest that what you're really looking at is a carefully choreographed show, especially as many of the answers, as we said, were obscure to say the least. But I've lived long enough in this world to know that strange things happen.
I did a lot of research for my book on the occult, in which I sat in with mediums and psychics and modern day oracles, if you like. And I think that there's an element to this that is interesting, and it is an element that needs further investigation. People do seem to have interesting abilities, I'll say. However, the vast majority of this it's psychology. You've got great psychological games being played, where people are being manipulated on a subconscious and a conscious level to do certain things, to believe or to be part of certain things. And yeah, this is a wonderful game that's been played throughout history.
The next morning, Andy wanted to take me to another oracle site in the area, on the edge of Lake Averno, about a 30-minute drive from Naples. It's known as the Grotto of the Sibyl. Unlike the rich and famous who would go down into the labyrinth in Baia, the clients here were ordinary people who would come to see the oracle to ask her about everything and anything to do with their lives, love, marriage, and, of course, money.
The ancient writers knew the Oracle of the Dead had to be in the area around Naples. They knew that because there was one lake, Lake Averno, that was mentioned time and time again. And on the shores of Lake Averno is the Oracle of the Dead. Well, Baia is a mile away, but right 35 meters off the edge of the lake, and I've been there, is the Grotto of the Sibyl. So I think you're really gonna like this place. You know, it's privately owned. Senor Carlos does the best he can to maintain it. Right. It's a massive, massive piece of property to upkeep. And look at this. I mean, we're here already. Yeah. Look behind us. It's like 100 meters to Lake Averno, which fits perfectly with what the ancient writers had said.
Yeah. Darken it?
Let's get our torches ready. All set?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Senor Carlos, very good to see you.
Oh,
yeah, how are you? Thank you, thank you. We know the ancient writers said the Oracle of the Dead, which was governed by a Sibyl, was close to the lake that's 100 meters behind us. And just look at the tunnel. It has a proper sort of processional feel. If you're going to go and meet the spirits, which will let you commune with your ancestors, wouldn't you have a nice, respectful sort of abode like this?
But this feels much more like a proper tunnel as opposed to a cave, right?
Yes, but what is really cool about this is this leads to the caves, and not only just to the caves, but as we'll see in a moment, to the river Styx.
It may have been used by those of more modest means, but the process was exactly the same as the other more exclusive oracle site in Baia, just much bigger and busier, with much more money being taken off people several times a day.
According to Virgil and Homer, this was where the river Styx would have been?
Exactly, exactly. And you would be descending gradually with a piece of mistletoe, which you had to give the ferryman to cross the river Styx. And you only could go over past the river Styx to get to where the Sibyl, to where the Oracle is. And I believe we'll find it down here.
All right. So why are we peeling off the main tunnel here?
Well, this would be part of the journey. We've now made the processional entrance into the domain of the Sibyl. Now we have to approach the Sibyl. We have to approach the Oracle. So we're descending quite rapidly now, as you can tell. But look at this. Look at that. That is a proper sort of river. Compare and contrast to the one at Baia. This is a proper river Styx. You can imagine a ferryman in a real physical boat, people standing up. Ferryman would probably look scary as hell, right? Would greet you here, and you'd have to put your mistletoe forth, and he would say, yes, come on board, and you would go across. And you can just see where this could physically happen. And, well, there's no telling how deep this would have been in ancient times, but in all likelihood, it would always have been filled with water. And this is the only way that you could pass through to get to the Sibyl, to get to the Oracle.
And I remember when I was younger and I learned about the river Styx, I'd imagine the boatman with a kind of cloak, a hood over his head, and a bony finger beckoning you across.
Absolutely, yeah. You can just see it, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's about the right distance, and there is no other way forward. This is it.
So if this is the river Styx, you cross the river with the boatman, and then where do you get to?
Well, if we had a boat, we could find out. But Senor Carlos and his family have knocked a hole in one of the walls, so we can cheat a little bit, go around the other side. But keep in mind, this was the only way until very recently you could get to the Oracle.
Right, so the Oracle is on the other side.
On the other side.
Okay, let's go and have a look.
This bit over here takes us to more of, well, what you'd expect in an Oracle of the Dead. But this door here was carved out. I mean,
But this is still like 2,000 years old, or
2,000 plus years old, probably older.
so. What are we going into now?
This door never existed, but the family, remember, this is private property, so the family had gone across the river Styx. They knew what was there, and just to make it easier for people, they put that new modern door in. So now we're entering a bit that has always existed here.
I can feel it getting warmer.
It is getting warmer, absolutely. And look at this. A proper sanctuary,
Oh,
a
wow.
chamber.
Oh, wow.
You know, this is exactly what you'd expect, right? This is the other end. This is reachable only through the river Styx.
So hang on, let's just talk me through this. So we're at the far end. This is the river Styx here. The boat would arrive here, and then the subject would walk up these stairs to meet the Sibyl.
Exactly.
Who would have been up here.
Exactly. Now, keep in mind, most of the questers have been interviewed for hours, if not days. They know everything about what they're interested in, who has just passed away. You know, this is a really dramatic setting where a proper consultation and prophecy by a Sibyl, well, you can imagine it happening here, can't you?
I want to go down and touch the river Styx. This is actually I'm getting quite freaked out by this. This is quite,
Well,
this feels a bit eerie.
This is a respectful abode for what you would expect for a Sibyl to allow you to speak to your ancestors.
So we are now stood in the Oracle of the Dead.
The Oracle of the Dead. This is it.
Andy believes that 2,000 years ago, there would have been an oracle in this chamber. Again, most likely a young virgin, surrounded by flames, who would go into a trance to communicate with the realm of the dead and the gods. The initiate, once he'd paid the priest his fee, would walk down the long tunnel, cross the symbolic river Styx, and then enter the sanctuary of the oracle.
The actual procedure of consulting the oracle, when you'd gone through all the rigmarole and you got to see the young woman, really depended upon where the oracle was and what the stimulus was to the oracle herself. A lot of what they came out with would seem like gibberish, couched in allegory and very difficult to understand. But it's not unlikely that a lot of the people giving these answers were under the influence of one thing or another.
They're encountering a young woman, typically a virgin. She's dressed in flowing, dramatic dresses, and she is consuming hallucinogenics by design. Now, we'd like to think that it's because she's going to be the conduit of the gods, and that's how she's going to communicate. But it might just be that this is how she puts on a better show. She's going to lose her head. She is going to go places. Her body's going to contort. And the initiate's going to know, or at least believe, that she is now in communion with the gods, and anything she tells me, I must believe.
If the oracle could get into a trance-like condition, then it would be so much easier. It would facilitate the god to take possession of the oracle's body and give the message. If they were dishonest and simply wanted the fee and had no more oracular ability than anyone else, then they would put on a pretense of being in a trance or a pretense of being in an abnormal state.
You have the oracle who would be hidden and whose voice would be heard, you know, coming out through the echoey rocks, along with the incense being burnt. So it was a ritual, and ritual is important. It's powerful, and the information that you're given at said ritual is something that you're going to hold on to. It becomes valuable, but it's theatre. It's fantastic theatre.
Our next port of call is the Temple of Apollo at Delphi in Greece, which became one of the most famous oracle sites in the ancient world. Kings, emperors, and the rich and powerful of the day flocked there to hear their prophecies. And today, the ruins are visited by millions of tourists every year. Andy Goff agreed to show us around.
So this is it. This is Delphi. Right below me is the theater, and just beyond it, the Temple of Apollo, where priestesses would give prophecy. And just beyond the well-preserved temple is the navel stone, for legend has it that Delphi was located at the precise center of the earth.
Believing that the site was sacred, thousands of initiates would flock to Delphi every year in the hope of being able to see the oracle, who sat in a torchlight chamber underneath the Temple of Apollo.
And this is where she sat, just beyond these rocks here, about 2 meters in the ground. This was the chamber where she gave prophecy. And this was the chamber where she stood over a crack in the ground where volcanic fumes rose and enabled her to commune with the gods.
There would be a priest in the chamber with the oracle who would frantically write down what she was saying, but in most cases it was just gibberish. Nevertheless, it was his job to interpret her moans, grunts, and utterances and turn them into cohesive prophecies. It was little wonder that scholars today question its credibility, but at the time, it was the biggest show on Earth.
So Delphi was the oracle center of the rich and famous. I mean, this is not respectfully where peasants and farmers came to have their future told. On the contrary, the richest people in all the world would come here and make offerings. There's a very well-preserved Athenian treasure temple, a treasury where people from Athens would come with, incredible precious metals, gold and silver, and give gifts to the gods for the prophecies that they were going to receive.
It's still possible to go down into the underground chamber beneath the temple where the oracle sat. It's quite a tight squeeze, but once you get under the main stone platform, you can clearly see the passage that led to the oracle chamber. Unfortunately, earthquakes have collapsed the end of the passage, but it's still possible to get a sense of this subterranean labyrinth. When the initiates came down here, it must have been quite a mind-altering experience when you factor in the chanting, the oracle's shrieks, and the fumes.
How was that?
That was amazing. That was so cool. Secret passage into the Temple of Apollo.
The Temple of Apollo and the whole Delphi site grew and grew over the centuries as more and more people came to visit. There were inns and bars and bathhouses and hundreds of small traders dotted across the hillside to service the tens of thousands of initiates and their companions. But Delphi had one fatal flaw. It was built on a huge geological fault line, including one which went through the center of the Temple of Apollo itself. The result was a series of huge earthquakes and fires which slowly but surely destroyed the site.
An earthquake was the real killer. In fact, a big one at the beginning of the 1st century BC decimated the area. I mean, look around me. The temples were in ruins. So everyone left. There was no reason to stay. The priests left. And what that did was it made the prophecies of the oracle, well, no longer credible, and Delphi slowly faded into history.
So, was it all a big show designed to relieve people of their money, or was there some real spiritual connection being made? I think we can say with certainty that the rulers and citizens of ancient Rome believed in it with all their hearts.
In the ancient world, the oracles were absolutely fundamental to the ruling elite and their ability to make decisions about their nations. Nobody would make a decision without covering their bum first and consulting the oracle. It's not enough to talk to the Senate, because they all have their own agendas. You need to say, you need to tick the box that you consulted the oracle. You consulted the gods before you went to war. What you didn't consult the oracle, you're out of here. You're assassinated. So it was a checklist that they had to do. And plus, it absolved them of any blame. Should it go wrong? I consulted the gods. They told me to invade.
There's absolutely no doubt that the people, particularly the important people, who went to see oracles, didn't just think they were talking to some drugged young woman in a cave somewhere. They genuinely did believe that the oracle herself was actually in communication with a god, or in some cases, perhaps even at some level, became the god or the goddess.
Another trick that was used in oracular consultations was to make it ambiguous. The famous one where the Persian leader goes in and asks, if I attack XYZ, what will happen? And the answer was, a great empire will fall. And the great empire that fell was his, but he couldn't say he hadn't been told.
Personally, I do not believe that there was divine contact with the spirit realm that allowed these Sibyls to give prophecies of any accuracy whatsoever. I believe it was more of a consultative effort, typically from the priest, occasionally from the Sibyl herself, but in all instances, it's pretty much them telling the quester, the initiate, what they think they need to hear.
The desire to know about our future, whether it be for love or money or work or even death, has fascinated us for centuries. The moment people, mostly women, set themselves up as prophets, we all came flocking, cash in hand, and the business of fortune-telling began. So, is there something to it, or is it simply a clever way of relieving us of our cash? Well, maybe it's a bit of both. I'll see you next time.